Welcome back. My name is Ashley, and this is the Black Sheep Christian Podcast. And today I am honored to speak with Jeff Cliff. Welcome.
Hi, Ashley. How are you? It's
Good.
very
How are
nice to be
you?
on.
It's so nice that you and I connected. Jeff is host of a podcast called Love Without Asterisks, who helps families and friends navigate the tension between their faith and their LGBTQ plus someone. I kind of took that out from your
That's
um,
exactly right. Short and sweet. That's the mission right there.
Oh, so beautiful mission. I do want to read something to get us started, something from
Okay.
your website that really touched me about what you guys do, and it's really part of your story.
Yeah, go
And
for it.
um, grew up in a conservative home. Boom, box checked in a weird way, but it is part of a beautiful journey. So there's this paragraph that really touched me in which you said, for more than 2 decades, my professional life evolved around building, first as a home builder, then as a developer of office and retail communities. I thought my work was about houses and buildings, but in hindsight, I see it was teaching me something bigger, how blueprints can change, how structures can be torn down and rebuilt, and how even the strongest foundations can be reimagined. Like, I'm going right into the subject line here.
Mm.
I found that paragraph beautiful because when I read this, it feels to me that in the beginning, the mindset was very rule based and not based in love.
I would say that rules probably took precedent. Yes.
Mm.
And that's probably consistent with at least me personality wise, just kind of
Oh, wow.
as a matter of just growing up. I mean, I was kind of a rule follower. I felt it made sense to me. It gave me the framework within which I could operate. So whether it's whatever we're talking about, whether it's our faith or the rules at school or the rules at home.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, but yes, you're definitely picking up on a major part of what I call a renovation,
Mm.
both in my heart and my mind, and really in our entire family.
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful metaphor from what I've done professionally that really applies itself well, I think, in this story. And ironically enough, I know one of your other recent guests talked blueprints too, because Wesley had his book, The Blueprint of Becoming, I believe, which sounds like a wonderful book. I might have to check that out.
Yeah, yeah, it is kind of fitting how the blueprints are coming together. So, to take a step back, tell us about your story because obviously you grew up in a conservative home. Obviously, you did the things that you need to do, but something just rocked your world.
That's right. And so my wife and I we both grew up here in central Oklahoma. We live in Oklahoma City. I have my whole life. My wife more so traveling between Oklahoma and Texas through, numerous moves as a child.
Mm.
But both of us were raised in very similar mindsets, strongly influenced by conservative faith. In my case, Southern Baptist was the kind of church that I grew up in. I even went to a Southern Baptist university. Um, and the things that you commonly learn there or are you share values with people in those circles, those are strongly reinforced in an environment in a community like ours, for the good and for the negative. But here in Oklahoma City, obviously we're the as I've said numerous times, we're the capital state of the red or the capital city of the reddest state in the country, and so naturally, as a father and a husband of a couple who has three beautiful children, in the case of this story, our oldest at the age of 13 at the time, um, you can understand why it might have turned our world upside down when she has a very frank conversation with me about the fact that she knows for a fact that she is in fact attracted to females and not males, and
Mhm.
that was something that that was her coming out, if you will, in the conversation that she had with me. um, and so what that's resulted in was really a 7-year period of I call it the renovation, but it was a lot of wrestling, a lot of struggling, a
Mm.
lot of relearning after unlearning. So yeah, that's I would say the genesis or the origin point of the story that led to the podcast for sure.
Yeah. I just want to commemorate. That's not even a word.
Mhm.
Um, I'll just choose another word because my brain can't even comprehend what I'm trying to
Mhm.
say. But I want to congratulate and acknowledge your daughter's coming out because that is one of the most courageous things a child can do, especially to a parent, because I can only imagine what her mind and her thinking was at that time, knowing your background, you and your wife's background, and because you was now question was
Mhm.
grandma also living in the home? Because you and on your website said that you have multiple generations.
Correct. My mother does live with us now. That
Yeah.
wasn't the case back then, but
Okay.
our life has evolved, and that's the case now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I can only imagine your daughter at 13 coming out to you and your wife, knowing your background and knowing what you guys stand for. So for
Mhm.
her to have that strength is powerful in itself. To
Yeah,
be able to
I'll
step
second that. Certainly in hindsight with new perspectives, that I can look back with. You're exactly right. And I've come to understand too that really what was happening is in that moment, she was showing me her truest self.
yeah.
And that's not something that's readily apparent at the moment for a parent,
Right.
when that's happening, especially when you consider just I would say that the viewpoints or the positions that we found ourselves most comfortable in at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I, you know, whether or not, our home was never the type of home where these topics were like negatively reinforced in any by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, we have numerous friends who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. Um, but as we experience, there's a big difference between having friends who are in the LGBTQ plus community and having a child who is.
Yes.
Um, and there's a lot to riff on about that too.
There is a lot because it's kind of like it in my mind, and I could be completely incorrect, there's like a separation, you know? It's like not in my home. It can be in somebody else's home, but not here. You know, I
Sure.
can go over there and be friends with you, but I'm not partaking or I'm trying to find the word, supporting anything, you know? It's there and then I can come home to here.
You're very much in the right territory there, and I'll take it a step even further. For a friend or for someone in your orbit, that you have no issue with, and you're just doing life with, maybe at work or at school or whatever. You're not really responsible for their salvation. You're not
Yeah.
really responsible for what may, depending upon your views, may be a lifestyle of sin.
Yes.
And so there's literally and figuratively more skin in the game when it's your daughter sitting across from the breakfast table
Yes.
that's having this conversation with you. So
Yeah.
um yeah, so as you can imagine, that really gave my wife and I a significant left turn in our life that we weren't anticipating, and that
Mm,
kind of gets into the blueprint metaphor. We had Here's where we live, here's kind of the way families live where we live,
yeah.
and we're going to go a step further and really plug ourselves into these communities. And we were a homeschooling family, and I've already talked about our upbringing. We were very involved in our church, and suddenly just the environment felt a little different for us
Mm,
for a number of reasons, and those weren't like immediately obvious or immediately available, to recognize. It was just a part of the journey and part of the learning experience that
mm,
I have found myself in numerous opportunities lately that I've been consulted for ideas or advice, or just, hey, you know I've had friends who have reconnected with me and said, hey, I know about your daughter's situation. I'm starting to hear some language out of my child that, I'm not familiar with is, can we go to coffee and have a conversation about this? And, you kind of help me understand what I need to see here. I was having enough of those encounters in my life where I felt like this is something I really need to try to maybe put out there in a way that might be able to reach people who aren't yet at a place where they have the fortitude to go ask somebody about it, or perhaps that I don't even have a connection with. But if I can put some thought out there that really lands squarely with some people and helps them through a situation in their life that we didn't feel like we had much help with ourselves, I think that's just kind of where I'm at. And so that's what Love Without Asterisks really was born from, is that idea.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's funny, um, with what we were talking about, because and it kind of moves into this next point that I want to talk about is because when we talk about the separation, it's okay, they're over there and it's not over here in my home. And I know that there are members of my church who has a child that identifies. And the one thing that is often said is, I don't support that lifestyle. They're the child and the parent isn't talking. Um, and the parent would say, because that's the only viewpoint that I have, you know, the issue is I don't support that lifestyle. But it almost makes me feel as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not the lifestyle that they're looking for us to support. It's just who they are, their identity.
Their identity, their humanity,
Yeah.
um, their freedom to have
Mm.
to have this say in their own life.
Yeah.
And there are some very complex situations out there. You've got anytime you've got a spectrum of where people can land on these things, everybody's situation is going to be different. But in this, kind of in the rhetorical example you just gave of someone saying, I don't support that lifestyle. Isn't it interesting though, that that's kind of like seems to be the only time anybody ever says something like that?
Yeah.
And why is that? I don't know. I mean, I didn't really ask you to support my child's lifestyle. I just made a casual mention of her because we were talking about our kids,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
um, it's just, I, there are so many little kind of tripping points that I didn't see as tripping points as just, your normal conservative dad raising his
Yeah.
very conservative family. And my wife and I were talking the other night. So we have two other children as well. And it's our oldest, who is now an adult and out of the house, that is the one who came out to us. But we had this, back to the blueprint idea, we had this very specific design for our family. And
Mm.
um, it was just your kind of run of the mill, very conservative, plugged into their church. Everything's Christian. We listen to Christian music. All of our radio stations are tuned into those stations, and we support those artists and we support those ministries, and there's nothing wrong with that. What we found though is that we woke up one day so deeply embedded within the middle of that we had very little connectivity with anyone who could offer a perspective that
Mm.
didn't seem like judgment, or that
Mm.
didn't seem to carry risk with the conversation about it.
Mm.
Um, and that's everything, just, from the group texts to the conversations, at church or whatever event we're at. It's not to say that we were, if, we didn't have a lot of hate thrown our way per se, but what is a difficult thing to navigate at that point is the perceived, and in
Mm.
some cases the real silence.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've talked about this before on the podcast, and it was a very real and present thing for me, was the idea that here I was in this environment, in these circles, um, and somehow I was expecting some fresh perspective or someone to come to my rescue, when in fact I was the one that was a mile down the road that nobody else was on.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
So um, I had to really sort of reshape my thinking about, like, not holding animosity towards anyone for not being there for me. Because in reality, a lot of people perhaps didn't know how to be there for me.
Mhm.
Um, what that led to was me looking outside of our circles just for some voice that seemed to resonate with me, that seemed to speak to the matters that I was wrestling with as a parent.
Mhm.
And even, and we're focused very much on, how it affects the parents here, but also at the same time to learn about what I need to be learning about for my daughter and how to
Yeah,
support her and and the big topic here, how to love her.
yeah,
Because it's easy to say that, oh, I love you unconditionally.
yeah,
But when those real life altering conditions start popping in, you know, you start to think about how you say that, because what you learn is, if you're not too careful, that you may find instances where that's not entirely true. And I'm trying to cast some light on those because there were things we tripped over, my wife and I. So, um, but as we wrestled through that over the 7 years, one of the very first things I did was actually search for a podcast for Christian parents of LGBTQ plus kids, and there wasn't one. This was at the time, at least, and this was nearly a decade ago. There have since been some that have come about. And they're great resources. I love them. I just felt like the way that I experienced our story, and the way I package it and the way I communicate it, might be an alternative avenue through which somebody could find some meaning and derive some help, as they struggle through this, whether they're a parent or whether, they're just someone seeking a better understanding of how to love and support someone who's LGBTQ plus, right?
right.
That could be a teacher, that could be an aunt, that could be a friend, that could be a coworker. So while the stories I share are often from the perspective of a parent, um, there's so many cast members in those stories, and you may be one of those cast members at any point, in any point of your day, right? I mean, I'm sure for the most part, any adult these days probably has someone in their orbit in some way, that is, LGBTQ plus, whether it's just something you suspect or something that's been a topic. But I believe that there's even things to be learned for people who may not be that close to it, but who might benefit from a better understanding of some of the matters of importance to people in that community.
Yeah,
And I've just so happened to, find an unlikely dive into that as led by my daughter, and I've learned some things that I feel like are worth sharing.
yeah. That's beautiful. As you were speaking, I was thinking, because I'm sure I'm not sure. I know
Mhm.
there are things that God would be like, Ashley, I don't think I like that so much. But at the end of the day, it's really about love and grace and mercy. You
Mhm.
know, there are things that each and every one of us have that God isn't too keen about a particular lifestyle, things that we like or do. But it's all about, as you said, the unconditional love, because really God gave you a gift, and that gift is to be loved, irregardless of what this gift does or does not do. All it needs is love. And so, to be able for you to be able to not to navigate through that, and then to be able to share your story with others, because there is interesting criticism when it comes to having somebody in your family that identifies.
Mhm.
It's almost as if like you didn't do what you were supposed to do, you know?
Yeah, that feeling is very present as a parent too, and I would even acknowledge, like, say for instance, our middle daughter, Giovanna. She's 15, she's in high school, but at the time was, you know, she was among friends who kind of had heard the term gay, or, oh, your sister's lesbian. And so siblings face some marginalization for it as well, in
Mhm.
some situations, as we encountered. um, and then, with that comes sort of the opinions that are often being regurgitated from what they hear at home. But
Yeah,
therein lies part of that challenge that, you really don't see until you're in the middle of it as a parent, when you're
yeah,
and to your point about love, I mean, the way I end every single episode, is the greatest of these is love. And, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13:13 that of faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. And it just feels a little bit these days like maybe those priorities have gotten a little out of whack, in certain circles of faith communities, particularly on this topic. Where my faith says this is wrong, therefore, that's going to be primary to any love I'm ever going to show you. It's and then there's even the question of, okay, well, what is love? Because we can say we love our children, but we can describe it as a sentiment, but it's really an action, and that action has to be taken every single day. So when you're faced with something that you deem as we never took the language of like, oh, this is the enemy, or oh, you're possessed, or oh, this is spiritual warfare. I mean, we were seeing very practical examples of how this was playing out in our lived experience. So really the religiosity of it, was more in our minds and in our hearts as parents.
Yeah.
But I would ask the question, it's very easy for someone of a particular political persuasion or a particular religious belief. It's very easy to have those, what I call drop the mic moments, where you quote a Bible verse or you say the thing and you get to walk away. But what am I supposed to do with that afterwards when I go home and have dinner with my daughter, right?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to just share that? Oh, you'll never believe what so-and-so told me today that I'm supposed to share with you. It's just kind of a ridiculous thing when you really sit down and think about it. So the question is, well, what's next? What does a parent do in this situation? And how does that play out in real life every day, in the home, in the car on the way to school, in the trenches, as I say, where these things can get really dark really fast. And, the statistics that really come into play, these statistics run true across the board of no matter what your religious or political backgrounds may be. But I think these statistics often play out more in the conservative religious homes, because, you can look at the Trevor Project, which is a great resource for support and for statistics on LGBTQ plus youth matters. But there, for an LGBTQ plus child who does not have an affirming parent at home, they have a tremendous, it is an astounding number of times more likely that they're going to attempt, make an attempt on their life, or tiptoe towards that in some way. When one parent or one adult becomes affirming or is affirming in that child's life, it drops it dramatically. But when both parents are, those statistics really don't skew too harshly away from normal cisgender type situations. There's, again, on the Trevor Project, you'll see the statistical evidence that shows, when a family is affirming of the identity of the child, rather than, constantly being negative about it, trying to manipulate them away from it, trying to pray the gay away. Those statistics really, become a little bit closer to normal life, if you will. And we had to learn that the hard way, unfortunately. In fact, mental health became such a factor in our house that one of the outcomes of this, besides the podcast, was my wife, who is a physician associate. She was a family practice kind of specialty at the time, but as we were kind of coming out of the dust of this renovation, she chose to take her specialty. She worked for a year to learn how to become a psychiatric PA, and so now she sees patients on a semi-daily basis, with mental health challenges of various sorts. But she's become known as a very affirming, LGBTQ plus friendly care provider, and that shows in her clientele list. Not that I get to see that, but you kind of get to hear, hey, generally speaking, wow, you wouldn't believe, the kinds of stories that are coming from this. So that's how we've activated on the love, I would say, or at least that's how we've responded from what we've learned on how to activate on the love. But we see how important it is, and we've come to understand that it's not as available as it should be to people in this situation. So it's caused us to kind of want to amplify our voice a little bit towards it, especially in our community, where we are.
Wow. That made me think about, because you said a couple of things. And it made me think about a couple of things. If my mind can even, because I have all these thoughts, and I
I
need
have
to
all day. Let's go. Mhm.
I have all these thoughts all at once, and I need to collect them.
Mhm.
Um, One thing is, I don't remember what you said, but I remember a Bible study. I don't remember what we were talking about or what we were studying, but I didn't know. But there were probably about half of us in that room that had a family member that identified. And one person was very adamant in that you can learn to be gay. You can't be born gay. You can learn. And I remember how that just shut people down. And I remember calling them and talking to them about it, and just to try and help understand what that message meant to others, you know. And I remember they were like, "Well, you can learn." And I said, "Well, there are people out there who explore."
Mhm.
That
Sure.
that is a true statement. And I
Hmm.
said, but to be nice and diplomatic about it, I said both can be true.
Hmm.
Both can be true. And I don't know if I've ever changed their mind or even planted a seed. But after that, when there was a clear sadness within the group, because it was like I expressed something about a family member and you shut that down. And so it almost felt like as if they weren't loved in the same way, even though, you know, it wasn't them, but it was the family member that they had the love for. And it almost is a sadness because I can see the divide between those who have a family member and those who don't. And it almost is as if those who don't refuse to understand because of, well, God said no to this. And so therefore that's a hard line that they will never move in any shape or form.
That, yes, yeah, you're definitely in territory we're familiar with here because in fact, this particular example came to mind as I was saying something a few minutes ago. But I remember my wife, kind of in the earlier times of this, when we were still plugged in where we used to be plugged in socially, that she had observed on numerous occasions that they'd be standing around having their everyday conversations about their kids. Um, and often, anytime our oldest daughter was brought up, even in the most casual way, suddenly the conversation turns political or theological.
Mm,
And so that, that shows that people obviously find some discomfort in that and wrestle with that. Maybe aren't even they're not even comfortable with the topic, perhaps because they really don't even know how to have that conversation.
mhm,
I don't want to be too careful to excuse, people's inability or unwillingness to go do the work is kind of, I think, one of the things you were referring to. Uh, but there's a I just found out yesterday he's going to be a guest on my show. His name is Dr. David P. Gushy,
okay.
and he has a fantastic story that's too lengthy to get into right now. But he has a term that we've used ever since we learned it from him through his book, and he calls this a transformative encounter. And he uses that in the context of something that you were alluding to a while ago, that until someone has a transformative encounter that they can't avoid with someone in their life who's identifying, they probably lack the capacity to understand it fully.
Mm,
And and it kind of goes back also to what I was saying about the drop the mic moments. Well, until you have to live past that Bible verse, you
mm,
probably don't have any reason to go wrestle with what's beyond it in
yeah.
real life. Um, and I don't wish that on anyone. I mean, it's not something that I, looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. I don't want turmoil and wrestling on anyone, but
Yeah.
it is a necessary outcome in this situation, especially if you don't want to live the harsh statistics that play out when you don't make a move to, to understand things differently and see things differently in this case.
Yeah.
So the transformative encounter was a big term that in, that was a it kind of moved the needle for us, especially given some of the authority and the weight behind Dr. Gushy's words. Again, he'll be on my podcast in probably episode 4, which will probably come out in January. But his story is very, very powerful in where he began and where he ended up today.
Mm.
And so, but beyond, I don't want to like take anybody and force them into learning something they don't want to learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, However, I've learned that sitting in silence or being polite about not bringing my daughter up or bringing up a matter up that is near and dear to my heart, that's not being true to myself or true to my daughter.
Yeah.
And there are ways that can be done hopefully in a way that don't have to be, resulting in conflict or tension.
Yeah.
Uh, so So yeah, that's part of what I'm hoping to do with this podcast. It's very, I didn't do myself any favors because this isn't exactly the kind of content my audience is going to want to be sharing publicly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey, I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of. It's funny, I do see a lot of like this was shared by DM like this number of times. Like, well, that was shared a lot more than it was liked,
Yeah.
So clearly it's landing with somebody. But um, this is going to be a slow build of an audience for me, but I'm committed
Mhm.
to it. It's an important topic. There's not enough of this conversation being had, especially in our communities, the communities like the ones we come from, at least. So
Yes, yes. And these days, in this climate, I pray that you continue to walk in this journey that God has given you. Because what people don't realize is that there are certain communities within society that are just more vulnerable than others. And when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, I feel like they are just canaries in a coal mine right now, in many facets. Um, in the fact of policy, how they're being treated in workplaces and communities. And if we don't support each other, then there can be a time when nobody can be supported. And so I do pray that God will protect you and your family and in the work that you and your wife do.
I
Um,
appreciate that. Thank you.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. I was thinking about another question in particular, and that is pronouns.
Mhm.
And I have a coworker um, who has a daughter, and this is very interesting in the fact that, in one setting, it's a pronoun of they, but then when it's a different group of people, it's a different pronoun she, and all because one area is accepting while one area is not there yet. I
I know this situation very well. Yes. Yeah.
And so for all parties involved, um, what for all parties involved, I will say that what advice can you give?
Where to start?
That was a big one. That's why
Yeah.
I'm like, because when you think about it, nobody isn't wrong. Um, I just think about the individual who identifies. They're not being, I don't want to use validated. I don't even know if
Aff-
that's the appropriate word.
Affirmed is usually. Yeah.
They're not affirmed in who they are. And
Right.
and it's not that they are lying about who they are. It's almost like as if I don't know.
Well, I think I can pick it up from here.
Okay.
I appreciate that question because honestly, the answer to the question is more questions.
Yeah. Okay.
The number of times I would have loved for a friend to ask me a tough question about what I'm going through with my daughter,
Yeah.
oh, that would have been water in a desert. You know,
Okay.
how are you reconciling this with your faith? Or hey, tell me about your kid. What are you guys struggling through right now? What's this like? What's changed in your mind that maybe I need to know about? Uh,
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier. There's just anytime you're in a room with an LGBTQ plus person, there's a cast in there. There's a cast
Yes.
of characters. What kind of cast member are you going to be in that room?
Yeah.
Are you going to be the one that makes that person feel like they belong in that room, or the one that contributes to those making them feel like they don't belong? I
Yeah.
mean, to me, that's a very easy tweak to make in an attitude and on a moment's notice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you have to do that, right? But just understand that you may have a role to play, and I'm speaking to the person who's not familiar, with this environment, this vibe. Maybe they're uncomfortable by it.
Yeah.
Questions, curiosity, concern. Those are all things. The big word right now that seems to be on the chopping block, empathy. I mean,
Yes.
really, like we're trying to rein that in these days when it's needed most.
Yeah.
Um, so curiosity, I think, is probably, if I could sum it up in one word, curiosity would be something that I would say, have it, step into it,
Mm.
tiptoe gently, but I would say that any reasonable adult, like in the case of me as the parent, that's kind of what I always come back to because it's my lived experience.
Mhm.
Unless you're just coming up being straight up like anti, I'm not. There's not going to be a question that I'm going to like shy away from. It's like, to me,
Mm.
I'm proud of you for being interested in. Thank you for asking me that, because nobody else around here, I'm not saying no one, but it's just it seems to be taboo to talk about it, and it taboo to ask about it. And I understand that some people may feel like, well, I don't have the terminology. I don't know. I'm afraid I'm going to say something wrong. Well,
Mm.
welcome to parenting one of those children, because God knows we didn't get everything right. I mean, the number of times, you know, we said something wrong that we had no idea was wrong, or it's, and I don't mean to imply that it's just some big, you got to learn new vocabulary, you got to do this and that. I'm not asking for anybody to jump through hoops. I'm just saying that, hey, be curious. Don't be so uncomfortable. I mean,
Yes.
and to your point earlier about how, whether it's, born with it or chosen, and I agree with you. I think both cases exist in the world. But my wife and I had a conversation long before this was even a part of our story as far as parents. But before we even have kids, we have a member in our family that we've gotten the privilege of being able to watch him grow up from birth to an adult.
Yeah.
And I remember one time coming home after some family event and saying to my wife, "Hey, I wouldn't say this to anybody but you, but if that kid turns out, gay, that's going to change my mind about whether or not you can be born this way." And I want to point out that this is 20-year old or 20
Yeah.
years ago me, right? Not today.
Yeah.
And she kind of laughed and she was like, "That's the same thing I was thinking." And here we are, 20
Yeah.
something years later. And this kid is one of the most wonderful kids to be around. He's a joy. He turned out, as we at the time suspected. But that was a huge experience for us.
Mhm.
I'm thankful for that in the sense that it sort of took that topic off the table for us with our daughter. Um,
Mm.
and uh, she was 13 when she came out. And to the point about, well, supporting a lifestyle or they're living a life of sin. Well, at that time she was just talking about who she was attracted to. That's it.
Mm.
It's not like she had been out there partying and going to clubs and coming home with people. I mean, she's 13, right? So it's like, okay, tell me what sin it is. I'm as a parent, I'm sitting here supporting. I'm loving my daughter and I'm trying to understand where she's coming from. And the more you do that, the more you understand there's more to understand.
Yeah.
And so I would say that curiosity would definitely be the one thing that I would hope for in those situations, among people in a room where they're wondering what to say, if anything at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It made me think. I had a stupid thought. I was like, are young people even going to clubs these days?
I've read that that's kind of like a dying trend, you know.
Oh, for real?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know if they've ever fully recovered from COVID, but that's not my lane. I don't know.
Oh, I was like, is club still a thing? That really says my age. Be like, and
Mhm.
what are they wearing today?
Right, right. Well, we've got a 15-year-old coming up the ranks. I'll have me back in a year or two. I'll answer that question
Okay,
for you.
all right, all
Um,
right. I'm just still curious. I'm just still curious.
right, right. Well,
Um,
so on the pronouns though, so like we have holidays coming up, and this is always a really challenging scenario for families on either side of this issue, right? Um, I can assure you, there's one side of the family that it's much more difficult on,
hmm,
and it's the one wondering about what's going to be said, or is Uncle so and so going to keep his mouth shut, or you
yeah.
know, do I let this kid out of my sight with the cousins who may not treat him well or treat her well, right? But that's I asked Sarah Cunningham the same question. She's my guest on episode 2 that releases November 1st. Sarah Cunningham's the founder of Free Mom Hugs. Wonderful
Mm,
story. Check that out sometime. But uh, she said that she had a wonderful answer, and I don't remember exactly what she said. She had like 3 different scenarios that you could kind of opt into depending upon where you saw your family coming out on this. It's like um, you can either not go, you can leave, or you can try to lay some policy down on an agreement of what is and what's not on the table. And I don't
mm,
want to put words in her mouth, but she had this is something she says on a regular basis, so it was very eloquent the way she said it, right? But um, that's just kind of how I see about the way to approach it, because we know we can't control other people or their mouths. Some people can't control their own mouths.
mm.
um, it's an unfortunate dynamic that's really at play here, in some of these scenarios. And uh, yeah, it can be harmful, it can be hurtful.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. You said something that gave me a thought, which is, first of all, when a child comes out, is just faith. Like when we talk about faith, that's faith in itself, to be able to come out to somebody about who you are. What is the right way or the wrong way in responding when a child or a teenager in your situation decides to come out?
That's an excellent question, because that's something we've pondered for a long time, my wife and I. Something that I'm seeing more and more of, seeing scenarios where people have responded in different ways, and I'm seeing trends, to the point of your question. Um, the one the one answer I gave a friend of mine who asked me this about his child, I said, I just right off the tip of my tongue was, be soft. Don't respond harshly.
Mm,
Um, this is a moment. This is one of those moments that neither one of you is ever going to forget.
yes.
And how you respond is going to set the tone for both of you in moving forward. And I sure as heck would not want to be behind, having to play catch up because my response was not what
Yeah.
it should have been. Um, the second is, big theme here: don't delay.
Mm,
A lot of parents, us included, think the smart play is to, well, let's just see if this is a phase. Let's just wait. Let's not freak out here, but let's not, you know, oh wait, she's bringing a rainbow. She's putting a rainbow in the room, and now all of a sudden we got to take a stance. It's like there's that kind of tension there, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that came from us not being willing or ready, understandably, to do some work on this topic. Now, we didn't know what work to do yet. And that's part of what I'm trying to resolve with this podcast, right? Because in our circles, our church didn't offer anything. There was no small group, despite being a small group for 3 other thousand life situations. If our daughter had committed suicide, or if our daughter had, had had passed away, there would be a group for parents of survivors of that. But there wasn't a group for parents of LGBTQ kids, and
Mhm.
you know, regardless of where you stand on whether or not homosexuality is a sin, I'm a parent of a homosexual child. Where's the sin in me? Why, there's no group that I can be a part of to work this out and see how other parents are rectifying this. And, so it led us to have to look elsewhere. I feel like I've gotten off the beaten path of your question, though. Have I? Am I still on track?
No.
Um,
You're good. You're still
okay.
good.
So I don't necessarily know where to take that next. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're good. I remember a kid came out to me, 6, I think they were, and I remember, I was so nonchalant about it, and, it wasn't even a coming out, it was a test, and the test was and that's what I call it, it was a test, and the question was, "What do I think?" And I was just so preoccupied with what I was doing, I didn't really care about the question. And I was like, "I don't know, they do what they wanna do." Like, it was so nonchalant just so I can continue doing what I was doing, and then after it was done, they're like, "Okay," and then they went off and played, and I was like and so it hit me, I was like, wait a minute, wait a" like, my brain just, like, caught up to what just happened. And
Yeah.
I remember years later, I went up to them and I was like, "I feel like what you were saying to me was, like, rude, like I was rude." And then they were like, "No, you being nonchalant, was the best thing." Because that meant that I didn't have any strong emotion about it,
I believe
about
that. Yeah.
her.
I was
And
sitting there thinking that may have been the best thing you could have done. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just trying to do adult things. Why are
Yeah.
you bugging me, kid? I'm trying to
Yeah.
do these adult things.
In the moment that I remember well with our daughter, I gave her a hug. I
Oh,
would give her a
wow.
good hug. And I told her, I was like, hey, we'll work through this.
Wow.
Doesn't change how I love you. Um, I feel like, we said all the right things. It's just that how that plays out afterwards sometimes is where when the challenge starts to kick in, when you
Yeah.
start to realize, oh my God, this is changing my child's life and mine. I mean,
Yeah.
like you start to think about your own social circles and, who is it even safe to talk to about this, right?
Yes.
Um, your children, or in our case, the going to school, we homeschooled for a while, but at the time, shortly, it was either around that time or shortly after, they were in a private Christian school, which was a concern for me too. Fortunately, um, that that didn't be true prove to be terribly problematic.
Mm.
What was interesting is I think we were pleasantly surprised and loved the fact that a few teachers kind of recognized the dynamic at play here and
Mm.
made themselves available and said, hey, you ever need to come hang out in this classroom anytime, you can. I've had some wonderful conversations with people in that school since then, and so I know that hearts are in the right place there, despite perhaps what missions may say on paper. Um, that's a whole nother matter we can get to some other day, but uh,
Yeah.
as far as my daughter was concerned, that was a good thing. So the friends, back to what you were saying about choosing this, something I write about. I have a little side email I have the podcast, and then I have what I call a companion thing for a companion piece for it. It's an 8-week email journey where I I use our story and our experience and the blueprint metaphor, the construction language that I try to use to help kind of illustrate some of this. It's an 8-week series of emails, and one of the ones that I have in that series, I talk about, or it's a 2-part email. I talk first about what it does to our friends as the parents in this case, right? How it kind of gerrymanders your social circles a little bit,
Mm.
and you start to see some of it's real, some of it's perceived, but you start to see some sorting, if you will, of who's going to side with you and who's not, right?
Yeah.
And that comes at different weird times sometimes. You seldom want it to happen on Facebook, but that's usually where it happens. But in the comments section. But um, the thing too to remember about in the case of being parents and watching your children go through this experience, it's really easy for someone of faith or who is not in support of their child moving forward in this life.
Mm.
It's very easy to say, well, my child wasn't acting like that until they started hanging out with so and so.
Yeah.
Um, that's low hanging fruit conclusion drawing there to say, well, somebody recruited my child into this.
Yeah.
Um, the gay agenda is not a Ponzi scheme. It's not, it's, I mean, it's a community, but it's not a club they're recruiting for, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but what is happening there is your child is finding belonging. Your child is connecting with someone perhaps who understands what they're going through, who gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good thing if your child has somebody that they can relate with and go connect with, and whether it's a small group of a small circle of friends or people at the school, or it's very easy to feel like, oh, well, that's a threatening situation. And to the back to the teachers I referred to in that one reference, it's very easy as an adult, if you see someone step in who is supporting your child, it's very easy as an adult, when you're coming from that conservative or that anti mindset, to feel threatened by that adult relationship. But that may be the best thing that's happening to your child,
Yeah.
especially if you're not providing that at home. If your child can't find enough belonging and affirmation at home, they have to find it somewhere,
Right.
or you're going to be living the statistics.
Yeah.
It's just that's how it plays out, right? Or they're going to live the rest of their life with terrible harm having been done to their psyche, to their self-worth, their self-motivation, to their faith.
Yes.
And so I really have a passion for shining lights on these not so obvious factors that come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. It made me think, as I'm looking at time, because this conversation is really going,
Mm.
um, with this journey and this conversation that we have. And I will have two questions left, which is one is, as I'm thinking about how, because I know my daughter has friends that identify. And I remember in particular, um, at where I work at the university, there was a table for the LGBT plus, and they had like pins, like buttons. They had buttons, and with the different flags. And I remember just my hand, I just grabbed flags, or buttons that had the flags. And then my daughter was like, my daughter was like, well, what about this type of flag? And I was like, I don't know what these flags mean, Jay. I was like, I don't know what none of these
Yeah.
flags mean. Just know that I support. The hand grabbed what it could grab. And I remember Jay, my daughter went to school and passed them out to their friends because the friends identify. And they were like, what about, because I can't remember what flag it was, but it was a particular popular flag.
Mhm.
And Jay was like, listen, the hand grabbed what it could grab. And
That's right.
so the
Hmm.
we're
It's a great
just
example of how our kids repeat what they learn from their parents, isn't it?
right,
Hmm.
right. But it is leading to a question. But for me, I remember, with Jay's friends, I was like, listen, I love y'all and support you, but I can only go so far, like I can be an advocate of who you are as people, but um there are groups that are forming their identities, how the way these identities move and think. Like I don't have the capacity for that because that's not my battle. But I'm here to love and support. And the question that I have is, how can those, whether they are learning or transforming, because that is a lot of information. What is the best way to approach when they are just fresh and new in this world?
Well, first, thanks for how you're teaching your child. That's awesome and that's helpful. That's helpful. It just adds to the greatness of the world, right? And
Yeah,
that's kind of what we're all trying to do here, is move in that direction.
yeah,
Um, is your question coming from the standpoint of like, how does a person without experience gain experience? Would
yeah,
that be a fair
yeah,
way? Okay.
yeah.
Um, I give I give another in one of my other emails in that series that I did. I have an example where I assert that one of the best ways that you can gain fluency in, shall we just call it for the purpose of this question, LGBTQ plus interaction,
Yeah. Yeah.
is to try it out on somebody else besides your child.
Mm.
And I tell the story in the context of, Sundays are my grocery shopping days. When Desiree went into practice as a psychiatrist PA, we shifted around a few things, and grocery shopping is something I do now, and I do it on Sundays. And there's this great person who works at the store I shop at, and they are often at the cash register or bagging groceries. And you mentioned buttons earlier. This person had a Love Wins button on one day. It happened to be Pride Week here in Oklahoma City this summer when this happened, and I just casually said, "Hey, like your pen." That's it,
Mm.
right? Conversation started, and immediately they looked up to me and made eye contact, and you could tell just a slight countenance change. And okay, somebody who's friendly on this topic. Said, "Did you get to go to Pride? Did you get to go to the parade?" And they said, fortunately, my parents aren't up for letting me do that. I still live at home, and it's just, they're not for that. So I had this conversation with them, and just it didn't go anywhere per se, but the conversation was all that was necessary in that case. I
Mm.
walked away with a fresh perspective on. In fact, I walked back to my car. I'm not a very emotional guy, but I walked back to my car almost crying over that, because I
Mm.
thought about the fact that this child's parents, this child doesn't know where their parents stand. That
Yeah.
was part of the conversation we had after. I just didn't go through everything else we talked about, but and it was like that was an extra straw on the camel's back for me to start this podcast. Is
Mm.
conversations like that. But back to your question, my point is this: simple interactions, they start there. Because think about this, if that's your motive, if you're trying to gain some fluency and some familiarity with this and some comfort level, I mean, you're helping yourself, but I guarantee you're helping that other person.
Yeah.
If you're in that room that we talked about earlier, and there's an LGBTQ plus person in there, and sometimes we can identify them, sometimes we can't. Often it's ambiguous, right?
Yeah.
But so what? They're another person in the room. Go have a conversation. Hey,
Yeah.
I really like your vibe. Can you tell me more about kind of what this style is? That's a great intro for someone you suspect is trans or non-binary, right?
Yeah.
Not that you have to know. And it's not like that's the end game, is to know what their label is. I
Yeah.
mean, there are a lot of people who don't like the labels, right? And so just have the interaction. That's all it has to be. And
Mm.
you'll know where to take it from there.
Well said. Well said. Because in the end, it's really about, God leading us. As long as He leads us, it will be good.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, and
will.
it's that curiosity that can help you there.
Yeah.
It's set aside the fear and the unfamiliarity.
Mm.
I mean, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Well
There's
said.
a video I just saw this morning of it's making the rounds of a delivery guy who walks up on the porch of a house. It's like a Ring camera video, right?
Yes. I
Have you
know
seen
exactly.
this?
Yes.
And there's a rainbow flag hanging like right there at an angle as you walk up the steps. And this delivery person like kind of has that flag rub against their shoulder as they walk the package up. And you see that delivery person walking back to the car, like wiping their shoulder like some, 7-year-old child just got cooties.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we thinking?
Right. Right.
So it all stems from fear. It all stems from unfamiliarity. And, we know where that gets stoked.
Mm. Yeah. My last question, as we come to a close, is about your journey. And it is, what is the one thing that surprised you the most?
It's a great question. I would say the beauty on the other side.
Hmm.
because, as unfamiliar, as intimidated, as concerned, as worried, as hurt and grieving I was, and my wife was, we would both agree that there's so much beauty to be found that you can't see when you're blinded by other things.
Wow. I don't know why I want to tear up. That's beautiful.
Thanks. I'll wipe mine too. You can go ahead and wipe yours and I'll wipe mine.
Thank you, Jeff. Love Without Asterisks, you can find them, a major podcast, and also lovewoa.com. I just want to thank you. I am honored and blessed to hear your story and to learn your story. And I pray for you and your family to continue to be able just to live the life that God has planned for you.
Thank you for that. There's so much value in those words.
Yeah.
These conversations, I mean, yeah, there's cameras rolling and yeah, this is going to go out, but there's so much value in just this one-on-one right here.
Yeah.
And your openness to the conversation, your openness to help me get the word out about this is valued as well. But just two humans here interacting is such a great thing. And so I'm grateful for that. I wish you and the podcast the best. And, maybe next time when you grab buttons, there'll be some new ones available because they tend to change.
They do. Yeah. They do. It's funny because the second time around, there was a bowl, and because it wasn't like a table, but it was in an office, so there was a bowl, and I was like, okay, I nearly dumped it out, and I was like, okay, let me make sure that I got every single flag that's in this bowl, and I got multiple the same thing. So
that's awesome.
Keep anybody out. Oh goodness, yeah.
Hey, can I throw one more just little plug in here real quick? So for anyone out there who, if you have someone in your life and you want to maybe understand a little bit more about what life might be like or how you can improve your interactions with them or learn more about, just ways to be a fellow good human with them. My Metamorphosis email series is right there. You mentioned the website, lovewoa.com. You can go down on that front page lower. There's a lower block that you can subscribe to right there. It's free. It's an 8-week deal. You get you get an email every few days, and it kind of moves you through a story and through some metaphors to help kind of illustrate some of these points that we've talked about today. But I've had some great feedback on that, and it's just an opportunity for you to do it on your own time. And if you don't like reading, there's even a have me read it to you link. So I've recorded every one of those emails much like a podcast episode. So.
Oh wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to.
Yeah. Well, audience, that is today. I want to thank you for watching, and remember, God is love, and God wants you to show his love to the world. Until next time, later.